You asked about the changes at the steering committee of Bilderberg. Now, one thing I've detected over the years is that the steering committee does not meet just before Bilderberg. It also meets in between times. Occasionally, like for example a few years ago in Italy, someone will stumble across a meeting of the Bilderberg steering committee. I mean, they'll see a whole bunch of suits in a hotel. 9 times out of 10 you wouldn't know who they were, but some occasionally, particularly in Italy, people are up to speed on this stuff. They've had a whole history of interference and political intrigue in Italy through the 1980s, Operation Gladio, and the massive spending by the CIA in Italy to fix the elections, to keep the communists well away from power. The P2 scandal, amazing actually to see a secret government suddenly revealed behind the scenes running the show. And so I think that's really what we're dealing with nowadays, is a change in the quality of the steering committee. We've seen the death of David Rockefeller. I was privileged to have a chat with him at the Versailles Bilderberg conference. I think it was 2003. Just saw him having a walk outside the conference, had a little chat. Comes across as a very, very nice man. He didn't really want to talk about press scrutiny of Bilderberg, though. All he would talk to me about was the best fish restaurants in Paris, and he wanted to talk about those. So, of course, he doesn't want to be interrogated. These people are not used to being asked questions. And one of the things I understood in Dresden for the first time, really, was just how one trigger word can get these Bilderbergs going crazy, because no one would dare to discuss these things in these rich people's presence. That word was Brexit. You say the word Brexit, their hair goes up, they hated the idea. It's a little bit like, say, going to Prince Charles and talking about Princess Diana. It's not the sort of thing you would talk about to someone in these polite circles. So these powerful people gather around them a whole load of lackeys, really, who just tell them what they want to hear. And that's the problem, is we want to get through to those people and interrogate their view of the world. And the mainstream media is simply not doing that, Luke. So, okay, the steering committee, the Bilderberg steering committee, most important to recognise the appearance of Peter Thiel and Eric Schmidt on that committee. I mean, the banking family, the oil family, the Rockefeller, it seems to be out of the window. The bankers are still there, obviously, but really have a look at that committee and see who's there. Peter Thiel, massively important in Facebook. Facebook now is, incredibly important all around the world as an intelligence gathering tool. This is a bit like what the Nazis used actually in the 1930s, which was gathering information on everybody in Nazi Germany.
And if I can interrupt, also a psychological tool where they ran psychological tests on its users to make them feel certain emotions in order to manipulate them to see the market changes that they would have on their stock and on their advertising as well. So they do a lot of weird stuff, also in collaboration with the CIA, also with the deep state, so they are definitely in bed, and it's very fascinating to see this kind of takeover of these kind of technocrats, these AI industries, these kind of life extension companies as well, that have kind of recently had a major influence over Bilderberg, and they never did before.
That's right, and so Peter Thiel is almost the perfect person to look at in these two. We hardly hear, when did you last see Peter Thiel on the news? He should be on there all the time. He should be being interrogated. This guy is the main funder of Facebook, and he's now PayPal chief. But you've not just got PayPal and Facebook, you've also had Twitter. We've got obviously Eric Schmidt now on the steering committee from Google. I think what's going on here is that you've got a decision made by the old guard, David Rockefeller and people like that, and Henry Kissinger, that they've got to control the narrative of the entire internet, the world's media in the future. They've got most of the mainstream media pretty much sewn up. There's a little bit of flexibility around there, but this internet is scary to them. They don't do, a lot of these people, they don't do emails, right? They don't want to have any kind of trace of this. That's why they get together at the Bilderberg conferences, is to make sure they can have one-to-one discussions, make little promises to each other, who knows, veiled threats even, but that there's no trace. So anyone that thinks that Bilderberg could do its stuff on Skype or something is just barking up the wrong tree. You've got to be in the same space. The other thing is there's possible questions about whether Trump's going to be there or not. Well, who knows? Interesting character, because he's not quite on board the program. But this is one of the things that, the reasons they bring these princes, these kings and queens, whatever they are, to Bilderberg, and these very rich, powerful people, is to schmooze. And Trump is definitely a candidate to be schmoozed, because he's pushing back, maybe not hard enough, but he's pushing back against the NATO, effectively NATO West's agenda to extend its power into the Middle East and places like that.
And we have seen himself call himself a globalist and a nationalist at the same time. Very confusing contrarian kind of messages. And it's very interesting to see the mainstream media love him when he kind of fulfills the orders of the deep state and the neoconservatives with his attacks on Iran and collusion with Israel and Saudi Arabia. But when he doesn't do what they're supposed to do, that is exactly when they attack him on getting 2 ice cream scoops. So it's a very duplicitous problem that I think is very hard to kind of wind down and figure out. But the media are a very huge part of this. And as we know, many media giants, many media owners, the conglomerate owners that control a lot of everything that we see and hear, they're at the Bilderberg meeting. They have a huge influence over it.